Hello everyone, welcome back. A wise man once said, "The biggest L's are often taken by people who don't know how to take an L." And today I wanted to just take a brief moment out of our usual Genshin coverage to talk about someone who has been taking the biggest L in recent Australian history and yet for some reason continues to double down on that L. The woman who picked up a wombat in the middle of the night on the road and took it away from its mother for a while. She's fled the country back to America, but she's also released a statement about all of this. And I figured it's an interesting read because well, let's just read it. Am I a villain? Things, dear reader, are not as they seem. Over holding a wombat, thousands threaten my life. Just these 3 lines alone have pretty much encapsulated this entire statement as just nothing but lies and deflection away from any sense of accountability or responsibility that she has of her own actions. Where no apology, no reflection, just lies. There was no threat to her life. The people were just saying that if you're going to do that on a temporary visa as well, get out. You are not allowed in Australia ever again. That's it. Let me be clear. These same people ought to understand the reality of Australia today. For the readers that are so angered by my mistaken attempt to help them that I am a hunter, do not be blind to your country. So she is a hunter. She is a hunter influencer on Instagram. So that much is true. However, quote, attempt to help. How? You took a baby from its mother. In what universe is that helping? Let's start with wombats. The Australian government allows and permits the slaughter of wombats. Thousands each year are shot, poisoned to suffer, and trapped legally. Landowners rip up wombat burrows with heavy machinery, poison them with fumigation, and shoot them whenever they can. Quietly, of course, so as to not face the wrath that has come upon me. So when you hear something like that, it does sound really, really terrifying, and obviously it sounds like some really bad policy in action. But there are problems with this particular statement. The Australian government allows and permits the slaughter of wombats. This is true, in the sense that culling practices are a thing. So culling permits are real. Thousands each year are shot. This is true, insofar as there is something called the Code of Practice for Humane Destruction of Wombats by Shooting in South Australia. As part of the Animal Welfare Act, humane methods of killing wombats result in rapid loss of consciousness immediately followed by death. So that's how we are supposed to do it. And in the Code of Practice, there is even diagrams to show you where you actually need to shoot a wombat in order to make sure that they just die immediately. So that's true. But poison to suffer and trapped legally is where I became really suspicious. A quick Google search did not yield any way of suggesting that poisoning via fumigation is a legitimate way of clearing out wombats. Shooting, on the other hand, is. And then on top of that, landowners rip up wombat burrows with heavy machinery. Ooh, that sounds horrible. How dare they do that? Except, if we were to go to the New South Wales Department of Environment and Heritage under the Living with Wombats page, quote, can I bulldoze or infill a wombat burrow? Only inactive burrows may be bulldozed. Bulldozing an active burrow can lead to wombats being buried alive and suffering a slow and painful death. Even if you have found an apparently vacant burrow, you must not fill it without confirming that it is an inactive burrow. Burrow activity can be confirmed by placing sticks across each entrance and checking every day for at least a week if these are disturbed. So when she's saying landowners rip up wombat burrows with heavy machinery, so long as they are following prescribed policy, they are ripping up inactive burrows. And what is an inactive burrow? It is a hole in the ground and nothing else. This is basically what is supposed to be going on. So when she's making a whole hoo-ha about it, that is actually what she's talking about. On top of that, none of this is like defense for what you did, which is pick up a baby wombat and take it away from its very alive mother. What's up with that? Why, might you ask, do they kill them? Well, to feed you. The landowner is trying to survive to raise you the lamb for your dinner table, the grapes for your wine, the produce for your salads. Wombats get in the way of this through putting their holes in tunnels across the land, creating hazards for livestock, and turning up the ground to eat roots. The wombat knows no better, as it too is merely trying to survive. And in this particular statement, she has already pretty much given the game away. She's described a pest. And anyone who knows anything about farming knows that, unfortunately, the murder of pests is necessary in order to maintain your crops and make sure that your livestock are not harmed. This is standard farming practice, as far as I can tell. Your government further spends tens of millions of taxpayers' dollars annually to fly around in helicopters and shoot beautiful horses, deer, and pigs out its window. The swift death is not afforded to these animals. The Australian Government Department of Agriculture's research showed a percentage of animals end up painfully wounded and stated animal welfare outcomes could be improved with a national level standard operating procedure requiring helicopters to fly back over shot animals and repeatedly shoot animals in the head or thorax. Sound kind to you? Yes, because they're pests. And we have to get rid of them. What she's going to refer to in a second is actually just a standard procedure, well, rather something that is actually necessary in order to maintain national park health. Requires us, the government at least, to do these kinds of operations. Survival for these animals can be near impossible and their lives are constant fear. Their carcasses are then left on your public lands to rot. Your Snowy River and Kosciuszko National Park brumbies are being slaughtered by thousands on your dime. Speak to your Prime Minister Anthony Albanese about this. Loving the National Parks and Wildlife Service of Australia while being angered at me for killing feral deer for food is hypocrisy at its finest. So there's a lot of things wrong with this particular paragraph. She mentions the carcasses, and I will refer to the New South Wales National Park and Wildlife Service Carcass Management Plan, the Kosciuszko National Park Wild Horse Management, in which just the overview alone pretty much destroys her entire paragraph right here. Quote, the National Parks and Wildlife Services is on a legal obligation to implement a national Kosciuszko National Park Wild Horse Management Heritage Management Plan of 2021, which requires the number of horses on the Kosciuszko National Park to be reduced to 3,000 horses by 30th of June 2027. Horses will be retained within 32% of the park. Noting the overriding legal obligation to reduce the number of horses, there are compelling reasons for the control of wild horses in the park. These reasons include the need to reduce the environmental impacts of wild horses on biodiversity, including threatened species, catchment health, including the condition of waterways and water quality and Aboriginal and historic heritage, and to do so at a rate sufficient to meet the statutory target and prevent ongoing cumulative environmental degradation associated with the continued presence of wild horses in the park. Yeah. When you have too many of one animal, it really screws over the biodiversity and, more importantly, the equilibrium of the environment with which you are trying to maintain. Anyone who has played the Equilibrium game on PS Vita would know this. This is like basic animal management 101. So when she's saying, oh my god, I can't believe they shoot horses, deer, and pigs and all that jazz, that's the reason. It's to make sure that the horses and deer and pigs that survive are surviving in a land that is like fully functional and maintainable. On top of that, she mentioned carcasses. Leaving feral animal carcasses to decompose in situ, where they land, is standard practice for feral animal control on public and private land across New South Wales and Australia. Carcasses decompose at a rate and are in the landscape temporarily. So this is standard practice. Now, obviously, not all policy is agreeable. If you disagree with their standard practice, then you are welcome to, I suppose, provide the government with an alternative way. Good luck. Obviously, I don't know any alternative way, but if this is what the government has decided is the way to be, based on expert analysis and opinion, then who am I to judge? All right? And they're only there temporarily. They're not there all the time. So there we go. Apparently, on the hot days, something like a kangaroo carcass, for example, can decompose within about a week. The other thing I also want to mention real quick is, while being angered at me for killing feral deer for food, this person is a hunting influencer on Instagram who has now deleted 90% of her photos, apparently. But prior to that, it turns out that she has so many photos of dead animals that one would argue that she has definitely shot way more than she can eat. So the killing of feral deer for food, very, very sus. How about the beloved kangaroo? the national animal on your coat of arms. In the last 20 years, approximately 90 million kangaroos and wallabies have been legally slaughtered for commercial purposes, and the number is not slowing down. Millions are legally killed each year. Are they not deserved of government protection as native species? If you do not believe me, take a look around the next time you go to Woolworths, where you will see kangaroo flesh sold as both pet and human food. So I will confirm this right now. At Coles and Woolies, you can very much find a steak of kangaroo. This is true. We eat kangaroo. Well, I don't. I actually haven't had the chance to partake in such a meat, but people eat kangaroo. And on top of that, you can use it as dog food as well. Meanwhile, kangaroos on farmland are often considered pests, especially kangaroos that break fences and trample on crops and eat crops as well. So that kind of happens. On top of that, you know what else is a pest in Australia, or at least was a pest in Australia, kind of still is? Emus. And emus, in the history of Australia, were such a pest that at some point we had to actually bring in the army to deal with these pests because they were destroying farmlands and or ruining crops and stuff like that. And if anyone knows anything about the history of Australia, you may know that we actually had the Great Emu War as a direct result of that. And we lost the Great Emu War. The animals on our coat of arms, we shoot on a regular basis if they are intruding into farm property. Now, that being said, that doesn't just give everyone carte blanche to just randomly shoot kangaroos. If you randomly shoot a kangaroo, oh, you're going to be ostracized from the society like that. You have to have a permit, and you have to demonstrate some compelling reason to remove the kangaroos in your property, or I guess within reasonable proximity to your property. You can't just go willy-nilly killing kangaroos. That's not a thing. You see, as sad as it is, most of humanity selfishly cares far more about themselves than we do the natural world. In many articles, it was suggested I should go see a wombat in a zoo instead. Let's be clear, breeding and keeping wild animals in captivity to be imprisoned in a zoo for outgawking pleasure is a sin far more egregious than holding one for a moment in effort to help. Let's start off with that first sentence. Most of humanity selfishly cares far more about ourselves than we do the natural world. Says the hunting influencer on Instagram. That's it. On top of that, look, the zoo thing, yeah, zoos across the world famously have some really horrible practices. I don't think Australian zoos are nearly as bad, with the possible exception of SeaWorld with that killer whale at the time. That was a huge controversy in and of itself. Besides that, like, the zoos in Australia, as far as I can tell, they really do go out of their way to ensure that the animals they keep there are very well looked after. Even if they are in captivity, they're a zoo, you kind of just do what you can, right? Also, one more thing. In an effort to help, I want to stress this again. You took a baby wombat from its mother. In what universe is that helping? Again. While the Prime Minister wishes harm on me for picking up a wombat, I implore you to take a good hard look at what is currently being done in Australia surrounding the real issues it faces, the lack of power for tens of thousands of Australians, and the treatment of its native wildlife. The tens of thousands of Aussies that I think she's referring to are like the Aboriginal, Torres Strait Islander, and First Island people. So yeah, there's obviously some socio-political stuff happening with regards to that. I won't speak to that because I don't know anything about it myself. But while the Prime Minister wishes harm on me for picking up a wombat.
To take a baby wombat from its mother and clearly causing distress from the mother is just an outrage. And, you know, I suggest to this so-called influencer, maybe she might try some other Australian animals. Take a baby crocodile from its mother and see how you go there. Take another animal that can actually fight back rather than stealing a baby wombat from its mother. See how you go there.
What we have here is a dishonest twisting of the words that the Prime Minister was using. Anyone understands what he was actually saying, which is the reason why you were able to get away with picking up a baby wombat and taking it away from its mother is because it's a wombat. Generally speaking, wombats are rather defenseless creatures against humans for the most part. But what if you were to try and pick up a baby crocodile and take it away from its mother? You'd be eaten immediately. And what if you were to take a baby kangaroo, a joey kangaroo, away from its mother? Well, you don't even have to imagine what happens after that, because anyone who has played Tekken 5 knows that there is a character called Roger Jr., a boxing kangaroo. This is not just a character, this is real life. If you were to take away a baby joey from its mother, you will be beaten senseless right then and there, because our kangaroos in Australia are military trained MMA UFC fighters. And they will throw hands. But you took away the baby of a wombat, who was significantly more defenseless. Then decide for yourself if I, a person who certainly makes mistakes, am really your villain. I have determined yes you are. And on top of that, one other mistake you made was releasing this statement. Chock-a-block full of lies and deflection. All of this to say, she has not learned her lesson. And she will not learn her lesson because she is stubbornly saying that she is mostly in the right, and that the spotlight should not be on her. Instead, it should be on the government. The spotlight is always on the government, and there are things that the government may need to improve on and or change because perhaps they are in fact approaching things differently. But none of that has anything to do with your actions that night in the middle of the road, taking a baby wombat away from its mother. That alone is already so reprehensible that you have effectively been banned from the country. I don't know if you've been legally banned from the country yet, but you have fled, and everyone is calling for you to be permanently banned from Australia. So well done. Let me know if you got all of this in the comments below. There is a good fair chance that I've gotten some of these things wrong myself, because I'm no expert on this particular situation at all. So feel free to let me know any corrections you have with regards to this in the comments as well. Otherwise, hope you guys enjoyed. If you like this video, hit that like button, subscribe for more Genshin Impact action, I guess. And until next time, I'll see you guys later. Thanks for watching. Bye.